Welcome to Corrective Consciousness episode 197, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. I'm your host, Old, I think, and this is
Lotus Prince.
And we wanted to take an episode here to pay homage and reverence, maybe?
Reverence.
To one of our very favorite media franchises, and that is, of course, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I wanted to get an opportunity to talk about this because we talk about JoJo pretty often, and it is an ongoing. I think it's popular enough in the United States where it has quite a few fans. It's no longer a cult hit.
Well, yeah, now people have more of a sense of what it is because the anime starting from part 1 came out in the States in 2012. The manga had kind of trickled in a little bit. It was like a part 3 manga, but anime is way more accessible, especially because this was
it's a really good anime.
Well, yeah, but also this is when Crunchyroll existed. You didn't have to go to Suncoast Video to buy it, so it was really easy to get a hold of as well.
And it's also airing on Adult Swim.
Yeah, it is now. Yeah,
which is probably the most prominent place for anime on television, I would say.
Let me tell you, after following JoJo for how long? A little over 10 years or something, it felt weird just seeing it on TV.
Yeah,
it
was weird.
Whoa, there it is. It was kind of I think I've said this before. Slayers was my first anime series ever. I had it on VHS back in the day, and there was one point where when my family got some big cable package or whatever, I think there was some channel that had anime on it. Same thing. Seeing Slayers on TV was the most bizarre experience.
I put it up there with I can buy Metal Wolf Chaos in a U.S. GameStop.
Yeah, it's just on the store shelf now. Yeah, we've heard about it for 15 years, and now it's just sitting there. There it is.
I had this on a burned CDR because it was forbidden, and this is something that
now
people at Usenet groups traded around,
Yeah. Now it's just here it's nothing. Same goes for when Nier Replicants finally comes out. It's oh.
This forbidden thing is now mainstream. It's just so kind of funny.
Yeah, just that whatever that Of Mana game was, Trials of Mana or something.
Oh yeah, exactly.
There it is.
Yeah.
It's just here now. You can just get it.
Used to only be fan translations of it, and you had to play it on a fucking emulator,
yep.
ZSNES.
Yeah, or SNES 9X.
Yeah, exactly. So, I wanted to quickly go over what my experience with it is. So I'm going to do a brief overview of what the anime is, just so, or what the franchise is, so people can get a sense of it before we move on to our personal stuff and what we like about it and all that kind of stuff. But so the manga, it kind of starts one place and goes a completely other place. I would say, but the first series is basically the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is characterized by supernatural events happening within what seems to be a realistic setting, and it goes from there. So in the first one, basically the entire setup is the Joestar family adopts the teenage son of a man who saved the Joestar father from death.
But that's the thing, though. He didn't. It was perceived that way.
It was perceived that way.
He was actually showing up to rob the dead bodies, and the guy was like, "Oh, you've come to save us," and he was like, "What? Sure."
But he ends up doing it because he knows he'll get rewarded handsomely, and he does.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is Dario Brando is the father's name, right?
Yep.
And his son is Dio Brando, named after Rodney James Dio, the second singer after Ozzy Osbourne of what was the Sabbath, Black Sabbath?
Yeah, it was Black Sabbath,
Yeah,
I think.
Black
Yeah.
Sabbath. Yeah, Black Sabbath. So
Which, by the way, has its own nod way later down the line.
yeah, but like basically all of the characters, all the major characters in the anime, manga, whatever, are named after famous musicians or bands or something of that nature. So
Yeah, songs. There's even one called White Album. That's an album.
yeah, even JoJo is a reference to Back in the USSR by the Beatles.
Yeah, Beatles lyric. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so Dio Brando, the son, comes to live with the Joestars and is basically an all-round dick for no good reason because the Brandos are just a bunch of dicks.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, as much of a dick as Dio Brando is, he loathes his father because his father's shitty to Dio as well.
Well, he's an abusive alcoholic father.
Yeah, like the thing is, Dio, like, I
Dio's
guess
a pretty big dick bag, though.
the thing is, the thing is, Dio is a dick, but at the same time, he's also doing that as like a calculated move.
Yeah. So basically, Dio from there, as you could probably suspect, wants to basically take over the family fortune and basically make Joseph Joestar. It's Joseph, right?
No, the first one was Jonathan.
Johnny. I'm sorry.
No,
Johnny
not Johnny. That's still someone different. Jonathan.
Jonathan Joestar in the original. Make him look bad. Who's the heir to this rich family?
Yeah, the Joestar fortune, because they're very very wealthy.
So it goes kind of to like this kind of aristocratic like plot, power plot.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like almost like a soap opera kind of thing.
It really kind of is.
To adding vampires to it.
well, that's the thing. They don't really establish there are vampires, and all of a sudden, like, just a vampire shows up.
Yep.
Like, Dio was just wandering down the street, like, getting pissed drunk because...
No, he was doing research on the mask first.
Yeah, but... kind of, but he didn't really know what its deal was, and he was getting drunk because his plan had gone wrong, and he's like, fuck. So he's just drinking booze, and he's lamenting that, like, oh god, I'm becoming like my father, too. And then a fucking vampire just attacks him on the street. It's like, what? So, like, by pure luck, he manages to, not die because the sun started cracking over the clouds right there, and the vampire dies, and Dio's like, holy shit. So he learns that... I think he defended himself from some mugger or something by shoving the mask on his face or whatever, or something.
No, he was testing it. He was testing it. He had deduced that the mask had some kind of weird qualities when you added blood to it. So
that's what it was.
Yeah,
and he put it on the guy. Yeah. He thought it was a weapon. That was what it was. He was like, oh, when blood comes out of it, spikes come out. I'll use this to kill Jonathan later. So he used it on some guy, but then the guy becomes a super powerful vampire. And he was like, oh, I made a huge mistake. So, but then he learns what the deal is, and then. When the police are finally going to arrest him after they discover that he had a plan to slowly kill Jonathan's father, in a desperate move, he put the mask on himself, became a vampire, and then became the big bad of the story.
Yeah, and so from there, Jonathan Joestar learns from was it Zeppeli or was it
Zeppeli? It's Zeppelin without the N. It's a reference to Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
So Will Zeppeli.
Yeah, he learns from Zeppeli, who learned from Tom Petty.
Tom Petty, not at all like Tom Petty at all.
Well, there is no M in that sense in Japanese, so he's literally just Tom Petty. Yeah, Tom Petty. A technique called hamon, which is
it's just ripple. Just call it
ripples. Yeah. So he can do basically like force blasts of air.
Yeah, it's basically like super concentrated chi from like a breathing technique.
Yeah, exactly. And then later on, then the series basically goes in all kinds of different directions. That's his battle with Dio there, and then you have what is his grandson after that.
Yeah. So one thing to establish about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is that it takes place in various locations and various times. Like, we are not following Jonathan Joestar now.
That was in the 1800s. It was
yeah,
Jonathan, I think.
you know, most manga series follow the same character. Maybe there's a time skip, you know, like Naruto Shippuden. Like, he's older, but he's still our same lovable hero.
The current arc has gone on for a long time, actually. Though.
Well, yeah, and that follows his kid. But but in JoJo though, like, Jonathan is long dead. You know, like you said, that took place in the 1800s. What is called Part 2, it's just a whole new story.
It's like
it takes
the 1920s
place
or 30s.
No, closer to 40s, because
40s.
there's Nazis exist.
Yeah.
And then Part 3 is like, I forgot, the 80s, or I want to say the 80s, and Part 4 I think is the 90s. And like it gets a little more.
Part 4 is current day, actually.
Part 4?
Yeah, it happens.
It is absolutely not the 2020s.
Well, no, it happened in the future, according to when it came out.
No, but even then, it was like the 90s or 2000s. It was like, and then like it gets a little more compressed each time because it takes place in the future. Like Part 7 is an exception; it's a prequel, but everything is effectively present day or close to it after that point. But yeah, Part 2 is in the 40s.
But what I wanted to get at was it's important to know that only Part 1 and 2 have anything to do with Ripple.
Part 3 alludes to it like once.
And that's because the main character is in Part 3.
Yeah, like what you were saying, Part 2 is correct. It is, in fact, the grandson of Jonathan.
Yes. So that's Joseph Joestar, who's a well-known character, a popular character in the series.
Yeah, Joseph is in Parts 2, 3, and 4, actually.
He goes on to fight some really awesome vampires in that one.
Well, they're like the next evolution of vampires. Like,
they're like super vampires.
Like it's established in the manga that they prey on vampires the way vampires prey on humans. Yeah, they're like these stone men who were like called pillar men because they were kind of like in these stone things. Pillar men is just the best term we have for them, but they're like even weirder. They have like just bizarre powers. Like one guy is like super flexible and waves his body around. Like it's bizarre stuff like that.
Yeah, and from there, Part 3 is probably the most well-known arc, and
Part 3 established something that JoJo continues to this day, which is stands. Exactly. So if you know Persona, where you summon a persona to fight alongside you, that's basically what a stand is.
Yeah, exactly. So the stand is a Patronus, even basically like another version of yourself that is actualized in a physical embodiment a mental embodiment, embodiment that only other stand users can see
and interact with. Like you can't hit it with a brick or something. Like if you can get your own stand to hit somebody else's stand, then the actual person will take that damage. Similarly, if you punch the actual guy in the face, then he won't be able to have his stand like active as effectively.
A stand can hurt like a physical body, though.
Yes.
But here's where it gets really cool and creative is like the stands from here become basically like a Monster of the Week, almost
Part 3 is very Monster of the Week.
Yeah, exactly.
It gets less so in later parts, but Part 3 kind of just establishes
Part 4 is even more so, if you ask me.
To a point. Eventually, they find that there's a villain to Part 4, and they deal with him. But Part 3, we have to go after this villain and fight his henchmen along the way, and it's Monster of the Week.
But basically, the stand stands very, very wildly in what form they take and what they can do. So the most common is it's another like a superhero version of yourself.
It looks like some kind of guy. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't look like you, but it looks like some humanoid thing.
Yeah, and even they have specialized powers. Like one of them can shoot jewels, is one of them. But the
jewels?
That's what his friend in JoJo's best friend in that one doesn't he shoot like
Emerald Splash?
Emerald Splash.
Yeah, it doesn't literally shoot jewels, but like they kind of have that reflective quality.
Yeah,
it's like this goo that hardens.
Exactly, and Dio is the bad guy of Part 3 again.
Yeah, Dio's back because he's a vampire. He gets to live a long time.
not just a vampire.
Well, yeah,
But,
I don't want to go into that particular detail, but yeah, he's an important vampire.
yes,
And like
exactly.
Dio is at least mentioned in every part that I'm aware of. So far, I don't know if that's come up in part 8, but part 8's weird by itself. But he at least gets lip service in every part from 1 through 7.
Yeah, actually, Part 8 has been running the longest since, 2011, and it's still running.
Part 8's been going for a while.
It's the longest running one.
Like, a chapter comes out something like once per month, but it's like 35, 40 pages. Because it's not in Shonen Jump, it's in like Ultra Jump.
Yeah, he's been putting in the work for that, for sure.
But
So,
like, one thing I should mention, by the way, is one thing I really love and respect about JoJo, and you're not going to get this in the anime, is that the whole aesthetic, the art style, is very different from part 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Like, they are all drawn very differently. It's worth looking at that alone, because the anime standardizes it.
His art style even like levels up as the part goes on.
Yeah, I could see that, but yeah, they're drawn in very different ways. Like I said, the anime standardizes it. The anime looks very good, but it's missing that little extra thing.
Yeah,
one other thing I should point out:
Part 1 looks like a lot rougher compared to.
It also looks like a straight ripoff of Fist of the North Star. Like,
exactly.
Jonathan is
very
Kenshiro.
beefy.
It's like, dude, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
But one thing that the anime does encapsulate, because it's characters, is that the main character you follow is very different. Like, Jonathan in part 1 was like a noble do-gooder. Joseph in part...
It's goofball.
Joseph
goofball.
part 2 and a goofball is a goofball. He's crass. He's very witty. He'll use weird tricks to win his fights. Part 3 is Jotaro, who
Very
is
stoic.
Joseph's own grandson, and yeah, he was designed to be like Clint Eastwood. Like, he's too cool. Like, man of few words.
Yeah, he doesn't say
badass.
much. Yeah.
Part 4, Josuke, he's
Hothead.
he can be a hothead, but he's way more
He's a do-gooder
friendly
and kind of
charismatic.
innocent. Yeah, he's kind of innocent.
Kind of innocent, but if you piss off his hair, then you will get the shit beat out of you.
Oh yes.
Like, Jesus. And so, like, it keeps
and
varying
they're all
like
named
that.
JoJo in some way. Yeah.
Yeah, Jonathan starts with J-O, and then Joestar. The last name is always Joestar, almost always. So, like, J-O and J-O. So, Joseph, Joestar. Jotaro, Kujo, because he's not actually, like his, how does it work? Like, his grandfather's... Yeah, his grandfather had a daughter, so he's a JoJo on his mother's side, not his father's. Yeah. So, like, Holly Joestar married, I forgot his first name, Kujo. So Jotaro is Jotaro Kujo.
You never see his father anyway.
Yeah, I don't think, maybe once or something, but like not like in the actual manga. Maybe it was a flashback or something.
Then Josuke.
Yeah, Josuke is...
What's his last name?
Actually, it's not a Joe. It's Higashikata, I believe. Although he was the product of like an affair between Joseph and his
He's
mom.
actually Jotaro's uncle.
Yeah, that's fucking... Suzy Q was not pleased with that revelation.
No.
Nope. Part 5, I thought this was clever. Jojo is spelled Gio because it takes place in Italy.
Geos.
Yeah, it's Jojo because that's how Italians would pronounce it. But that's Giorno Giovanna, and he is Dio's son because that apparently happened at one point or another. I forgot who his mother was.
When he was a vampire or before he was a vampire?
Well, it would have to be after. Before he was a vampire, he was fucking 1800s.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Part 6 is Jolene Kujo, because she's Jotaro's daughter, and she's one of my favorite JoJos. It's her or Joseph. She's way up there.
Joseph. I love Joseph.
I love Joseph, but you will love Jolene. Part 7, this is why I mentioned this earlier. Of course, Johnny is a nickname for Jonathan, but Part 7 is Johnny Joestar, and he is a jockey. Yeah. So, everyone in that part is a jockey. He also is a
quadriplegic, isn't he?
Yes. And the way he became quadriplegic is he was a fucking douchebag piece of shit, and he paid the price for it. This was not like a car accident, like someone fucking shot him. And in Part 8, it's like an alternate reality, I think, of Part 4. It's weird. So it's still Josuke Higashikata, but it is not the same character at all. It's really bizarre. So yeah. I'm still trying to figure out what's going on with that, but it's very interesting.
So yeah, and the situations and the sense of humor are always like that's where bizarre comes from. Like the situations that they get into and the way they have to think, so their ways out of them are very creative.
Yeah.
Like for instance, in part 4, you have a stand that um basically is just like a water stand, and
Oh,
like
Aqua
that.
Necklace.
Yeah, aqua necklace, and that is very dangerous. Even though like in its stable form, it's very easy to beat up. But
Yeah.
like imagine not having to be wary around any form of water, like when you're
Oh yeah, no, JoJo is
yeah.
really good at making you nervous about your basic surroundings. I had mentioned, I had alluded to this before, but in part 5, there's a stand called Black Sabbath, which exists in
Black
shadows.
Sabbath.
So it exists in shadows. So every stupid little thing around you, just anything, could be where it spawns, because everything casts a shadow. You cast a fucking shadow. So that was a scary thing to deal with. There
The
are
one
some
that I'm
cases
like,
where,
encountering right now is Bad Company. It's called Worst Company in the American version because they need to make sure that
yeah,
they're
I remember in the Duang subs, it was called Destroying Army. It's like, no.
no, it's Bad Company.
It's very, well, yeah, and you can
Of
tell because like, I think it like says it on the guy's jacket or something. Like you can't
yeah.
miss it. But the thing is, there are some stands where it's way easier to fight just the guy. Like in part 3, the most of the stands were not musical references; they were tarot cards, and one of them was the sun, and it was just a projection of the sun. What the fuck are you gonna do about that? So you gotta find the guy and just beat him up.
Yeah, there's some really cool ones, but I now that we introduced this kind of thing, I wanted to get into some of the finer points of like why we like it. First of all, I wanted to go over how I was introduced to the series and how I found out about it.
Sure.
I think the mainstream or the first real introduction that Americans that were gamers and liked anime at the time back in
Yeah.
the late 90s. Probably the first way you would have been introduced to this would have been the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure PS1 game and Dreamcast game. They came out around
Yeah.
99 or 2000.
Something like that. Yeah, it was a Capcom fighting game.
That
This is
it
one of
was
those things, if you know JoJo now and you saw the covers, you'd be like, oh, it's a JoJo game. But back then it was just some weird Japanese looking
yeah.
like, do I want to buy this? I don't know what this is.
Yeah, they kind of like I remember EGM like explaining the significance of the games coming in their Electronic Gaming Monthly, coming to America because they were based off of an anime license that really didn't exist in America.
Even the anime, like, almost didn't exist in America.
Well, I can't think of any other form that was official at the time.
Well, no, it was the manga. That was it.
Yeah.
Like, there was some Japanese only, there was a
No,
Japanese
but
only
I mean
video
in
game.
America, probably only the game was official at that time.
Yeah, absolutely not. We got the part 3 manga at one point, but I forgot when that was.
Yeah, Part 3 manga didn't come until we were in college.
Yeah, so that would have been it then. Yeah, the PS1 game was probably the first taste of JoJo Americans had gotten in an official capacity.
Yeah.
So nobody knew what the hell it was.
They explained that it was one of the most popular mangas in Japan.
And that's the thing. It's getting popular in America now, but it is a cultural phenomenon in Japan to the point where even some Western media has referenced it, and like we never knew. Even like games that are localized over here, of course, Japanese games would be more likely to reference it, but we like didn't know that it was a reference to anything. Like, of course, I'm gonna reference fucking Resonance of Fate because everybody knows that game. But like, when you get into like a critical state where your health is like at risk, the music changes and you're like, oh no. The main guy you play as, Vashiran, has this really distinctive way of running, like his running away animation where he like, it's hard to describe without showing it, where he like opens his hands up and
the Nathan Drake guy play him?
Yes, yeah, Nolan North. Where Vashiran, he puts his hands into like the knife formation, like the karate chop, like he extends all of his finger, and he like runs by like with an exaggerated arm movement running animation. It's the same thing you do in Monster Hunter when you're like escaping from something, but that's the part 2 JoJo like run away like that Joseph does. Tons of things reference this. all the time, and like nobody knew.
Another big reference in actually a Western media property is and this was a big thing back in the day. It's kind of a joke now, but the original season of Heroes.
Oh yeah.
One of the main characters, Hero, is from Japan, and his favorite manga is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. He bases his superhero persona off of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, actually.
JoJo references are everywhere. Like even if we dedicated a podcast to JoJo references, we would run out of time. Like everything, like so much stuff references JoJo, and this is before the meme. Is that a JoJo reference? Like tons of things have referenced it forever.
Yeah, it is literally one of the top mangas in Japan, and it's something that like tons of people read on a monthly basis.
And by the way, one reason for this might be because of how bizarre it is. Like I actually read the book. Like
it's very creative.
Oh yeah, no, I actually read the book by the mangaka Araki. It's like Theory and Practice of Manga, or Manga and Theory and Practice, and he was talking about what he was trying to do to come up with something new and interesting. Because JoJo's not his first manga; he's written like 2 or 3 things before that.
He had a gambling one, I think, something like that.
Maybe, yeah. But one of the things that set it apart from other things is how Western it is. I mean, part 4, it's back in Morio, Japan, but like. Part 1, we've already gone over. It's in England.
Part 1 takes place in England. Part 2
is in America.
Yeah.
Part 3 is
Japan. It starts in Japan.
Barely in Japan. Yeah. Part 3 is in Japan for like 5 minutes, but they're making their way over to Egypt. They go through India and then get to Egypt. Part 4 is in Japan. Part 5 is in Italy. And like he does crazy research. He goes on location and like tours locations to get a sense.
Yeah, and he'll even give you like travel advice at the end of some of the mangas.
Yeah, but like there's little things like in Italy, like the street signs like are correct. Like he really does his research, because he's mentioned that he's fucked up before, and when you have an audience as big as he does, they will call you out on it. Like when he was writing Bao, which is like Americans have heard of it. America did get a Bao movie. But it was like, yeah, okay. But he pointed out in his book that he wanted the start of it to be on this train where like lightning strikes it like Frankenstein, and things happen and the guy becomes the Bao guy. Well, I don't know how it worked, but he used a real train, and he was aware that like the tracks were like this, but I think it would be cooler if I did it like that, and like I want it to be like a steam engine or whatever. And like everybody wrote in, they're like, dude, you got the train wrong. And he was like, fuck, I shouldn't have done that. So it's like little things like that. So he is very specific to detail.
His first one was called Poker Under Arms. So
yes, and that's not only is that Western, that's in the Wild West. Like so like that didn't keep going. I mean, he finished the manga, but that's not like this huge like product everybody loved. But it drew people's attention just because it wasn't yet another tough guy in high school, or like in the 80s would have been like badass like Kenshiro kind of thing. So like he tried to be different. He doesn't want to be just another one of this kind of style.
Yeah, and that's kind of what's cool about it, is every part has a different conceit too. So like every part feels substantially different from the last.
I would say part 6 feels kind of like part 3 with the Monster of the Week thing, but the general aesthetic is very different all the time. Even part 8, which is effectively a remake of part 4, does not really feel like part 4.
Yeah. So, I just wanted to bring up how I was introduced. Like, I had a Dreamcast at the time, and what they did was they ported, they had made 2 fighting arcade games.
Yes.
Based off of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. The first one is
like
translated
JoJo's
as
Venture.
JoJo's Venture for some reason.
It's basically the same game, only with like some animation changes, maybe a couple fewer characters or something.
Yeah, you want to play the second one.
Like the Dreamcast version is cool because it comes with both games. That's novel. But the PS1 version has a campaign mode, which takes you through effectively like the story of the manga, even fighting unplayable characters like Grey Tower or Judgment, like characters you can't play as. Death 13. It's pretty cool they put them in the game. I like that.
Yeah, and when I was playing that, like I didn't know what to think of it. It was just like a pretty cool like underground fighting game that people really liked at the time, and you know it was just known among like hardcore gamers, you know that kind of thing. And then it wasn't until like college that when I met you, right around what 2004, I think is when we met.
Oh, not a chance, dude. Come
Or
on. 2004
2008.
is
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
2004 is when we
2008.
waited to college. Yeah, 2008 was when grad school started.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
senior year / grad school. Yeah.
sorry, 2008. And what we started buying, like Right Stuff was having like extreme sales on things.
You got away with fucking murder with this one.
We
Well,
ended up,
hold on. We'll get there because like this will get to how we converged.
yeah,
So what I was gonna say is like my experience with JoJo was also the game, but like I didn't have the game. I had never heard of it because I didn't have a PS1 like ever. Like I got a PS1 like a few years ago to put things into perspective. I was an N64 kid, so I never even looked at the PS1 aisle. I didn't know what kind of games they had at all, except for like the really obvious stuff like Metal Gear Solid and Resident Evil. Like my friends had a PS2. Like, okay, that's how I know things. So my experience, I don't remember how this came up, but I saw a YouTube video of the JoJo fighting game, and you know you can bring out your stand and fight with it, and I just saw like, is this really a game where one player plays against another player, but you're
yeah,
controlling like two people? How does this work? So I like,
yeah. I always
so
thought it was really weird.
so they got me. They got me to look up what JoJo was. I was like, it was based on a manga. So I looked up scanlations of it online and started reading it. And I was like, actually, this is pretty awesome. So I was the guy who like got my friends into JoJo. I mean, they never got hardcore into it, but they were like, oh, this is pretty cool. And like our friend Perry is like slowly following the anime series now, which is pretty cool. Our friend Luminaire, like, he watched part 3. I don't think he really read past that, but he was like, ah, that was a fun experience. So, like, I at least kind of got people into it, which is pretty nice. And, yeah, then you and I, like, met and we were talking about it, and then that led you to, like, the deal of a fucking lifetime, frankly.
Yeah, so what ended up happening was Right Stuff was well known for their deep discounts that they would do every once in a while on well-known franchises. They would do it on like Trigun at the time. You could buy like all of Trigun for like a super discounted amount.
Yeah.
And this was back in the day when everything was on individual DVDs. You might get
Yep.
like 2 to 3 episodes of an anime on a DVD.
And that's how JoJo worked as well.
Yeah.
There was an OVA released in the 2000s. 13 episodes in total, 6 discs. The
Yeah.
number of episodes per disc, 3, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2.
Yeah, and in Japan, you'd probably be charged around like $80 for one disc. I would
Yeah,
assume.
in America,
Yeah.
it was like
It
even
was
a
still like $30, I think.
yeah, I was gonna say 30 at conventions. I remember like before it got impossible to find. I remember seeing people having like a couple of the individual DVDs of the OVA for like 30, $40 for fucking 2 episodes. I mean, they were like 40 minutes each, but still.
Yeah, so I think we ended up getting it for $40, the entire
No,
thing,
I
right?
want to say 60.
60
Which is
still.
still insane because yeah, not like because it was $120. I like again, I think you're the one who bought it, but it was $120 half off. So it was
And
60
and
bucks.
you got like the big box with it. and
Yeah, I was
everything.
gonna say, yeah, it was all 6 DVDs and in a box. And I don't know if the individual DVDs did this. Maybe they did, but in any case, ours did. Each DVD came with like a JoJo themed tarot card. I mean,
Yeah, I was
don't,
gonna say that too.
I don't think they ever made the full tarot card set officially, but it was like a contextually appropriate one. Like there was the star for JoJo's own stand, Star Platinum, that kind of thing. So it's like, oh, okay, so you had like 6 tarot cards, which is pretty cool. So there's the box set. You bought 3 copies for you, for me, for Luminaire.
Yeah, and we were really excited to get this at the time. And around the same time, Viz was publishing part 3 of the manga.
Okay.
They had skipped straight to part 3, which was kind of a shame.
It is
but
a shame, but at the same time,
It's understandable.
like even the part 3 manga didn't take off in America. Part 1 would have just died even sooner.
Yeah, part 3 is where it really gets going. Obviously,
If you've heard of JoJo at all, it's probably because of part 3. Jotaro and Stands. If you don't know anything more than that, it's a part 3 thing.
exactly. But that's when I started reading the scanlations, because the fan translated stuff, because I knew it was part 3 that they were releasing.
And I didn't even know that it was being released.
So I was picking those up as Viz was releasing them, and they almost didn't finish the run even. And I think the later volumes of that particular run are very difficult to find too, because they almost didn't finish it. They went on hiatus for quite a bit. But before, while I was waiting for those to come out, and I was like, heck if I'm going to start with part 3, because they could just give you a short summary of what happened in part 1 and part 2.
And that's what happens in the anime, by the way. Like, the opening credits of the part 3 anime is a textless, dialogue-less, very abridged recap of part 1. Like, you should know what this means already.
Exactly.
And then the second half of the part 3 OVA, the opening credits, is like the ancient Aztec ceremony where they put a mask on somebody and stab them with a dagger, but you don't see why they're doing that, and it has nothing at all to do with what happens in part 3. So you're like, what? Was that the wrong anime? Like again, you're supposed to just know.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, well, I'll read the fan subs, and then once I get to the fan translations, until I get to part 3, and then I'll read the official ones. So what I ended up doing was I read part 1. Part 1 and part 2 are actually very short compared to the rest of the series. Part
1 is like
very short. It's
4 or
3
6
volumes.
Maybe that.
It's
like
3 volumes in the current set.
It's short to the point. Oh, in the current set, yeah, where they're much bigger. Yeah. But it's short to the point where, like, within a single volume of the manga, part 1 ends and part 2 begins. They don't even separate them.
Yeah.
Like, it just goes to the next one.
So, I say it's a shame, because part 1 is very good. It's very fun. And it does take a bit to get going, but it's quite fun.
What's also rough, and Araki has pointed that out himself, is that the bad guy gives the good guy a hard time, but then the good guy turns things around. Mm-hmm. But the bad guy gives the good guy a hard time for a while.
Yeah.
Like, and that cost him readers back in the day. It's like, because when it's being released by chapter, it's been like 3 weeks, and they're like, dude, it's still going. Jesus Christ. Yeah. Like, we please.
Vampires don't happen until probably.
It's not until like there's like a minor time skip where it just it's not like they grow older, but it's like,
no, it's like
later they're just friends now, and you're like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
And all because Jonathan beat the shit out of Dio.
Yeah, exactly. But so what I was gonna say is part 2 is still one of the best parts.
I love part 2. Part 4 I think tells us like a more interesting story in the sense of getting familiar with like the town and everything. But part 2 is just like, with Joseph, the character is just so fun. He's just such a fun guy to follow.
Part 2 is one of the best like pieces of manga I've ever read, and that's up there with like Death Note, like the first half of Death Note.
Yeah, the early Death Note.
Yeah,
but part 4, like, again, when like you get so intimately familiar with the characters of the town, and when you meet Kira, he is like, Dio's way more iconic, but Kira is terrifying. He is a scary guy.
Well, and part 3 is no slouch either. There's some.
No,
really
part 3 is iconic
stuff
for a reason. It's just very Monster of the Week until they finally get to Dio, but that's like at the end.
Sure. I do like the gambits that they have to do in that one.
Dude,
quite a bit.
The gambits they had to do, like, to put things into perspective. The OVA series, like I said, is 13 episodes, and they cut a lot of characters from the manga.
Yeah.
That's one thing I was really impressed with, by the way, with the PS1 game, is it goes through like the whole manga, including like the weird obscure stuff, like the little girl on the ship. It's like, oh, that wasn't in the OVA at all. Sure. But the OVA cuts a ton of characters. But you gotta have the poker game with Darby. Mm-hmm. You gotta have a whole episode, like 40-45 minutes of just Darby, and it's one of my favorite episodes. It's so good.
So, before we get too long in the tooth, I just wanted to say that the current anime is a lot more comprehensive than the old OVA is, even though it's not hand drawn like the old OVA was. The old OVA is beautiful, but
Yeah.
because of its hand drawn aesthetic and all that, and it's an OVA, so it was like relatively high budget.
Yes.
But the current anime is very comprehensive. It does every part. And
Yeah,
has been
they
going
finished part
in
5,
succession.
so I'm eagerly awaiting part 6. I hope they do that.
So, and they don't cut much if at all, any content out. It's actually very comprehensive.
Yeah, whatever they do cut is going to be
Very
like
minor.
either inconsequential or like a risque thing that it's like we don't need to cover that,
Yeah,
or like
exactly.
like a nipple showing or something. It's like in one frame of the manga, like fuck it, we don't need that. You know, stuff like that.
Exactly. So it's very accurate to the source. So it is a good way of getting into it, and I think you can watch it free on Crunchyroll on your PC without a subscription.
Yeah. And I've actually seen YouTube videos, by the way, that cover the changes between the manga and the anime, and like again, it's mostly like you might have missed this, but I didn't. You know, that kind of thing.
The major thing is like once it's localized, like the names change.
Yeah, to avoid copyright, because again, everything's named after a real person or band or whatever. So like Vanilla Ice is called like Cool Ice.
But here's the thing: if you watch subtitled, you can actually hear them say what they
names.
actually are. So he'll say Vanilla Ice.
Vanilla Ice. It's great.
Exactly. I wanted to say that if you want to get into the series, and you really should, I'm sure you've heard the names and all that stuff. Right now is a really good time to do it.
And like we mentioned, by the way, on Reactive, there are several JoJo games as well, of varying quality. To be honest, like I don't know if there's really like a fantastic JoJo game. Like the PS1 fighter is probably as good as it's gonna get.
Yeah, and they later ported it to PS3. I don't think it's
you can't get that anymore. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But even then, I think it was just the fighting game and not the story mode.
Yeah.
Like, so the PS1 is like the most comprehensive one, even though it's obviously not HD and widescreen. The best looking one is the Dreamcast. Like, again, except for the HD PS3 port that you can't get anymore. But there's a bunch of stuff. America has gotten... I mean, the PS1 and the Dreamcast game are basically the same game, so let's call that one thing. We've also gotten the PS3 fighter, JoJo All-Star Battle.
All-Star Battle, yeah.
That thing, though, was Amazon and GameStop exclusive, so it's a little hard to find now. Like, it's more expensive than, like, the Japanese collector's edition. America didn't even get a collector's edition.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to get that
I was afraid, like, because, well, yeah, I didn't think they would localize it because of all the names.
Yeah.
Because that's literally the reason they did not localize like one of the PS2 games. Like, I'm not changing names, so I didn't think we'd get the PS3 game, so I imported the Japanese one, because like the price went up when it was new, and then people were like, yeah, this isn't that great, so the price went down, so I got the collector's edition. But then America got a copy. I couldn't believe it. And America's
it's also
only
famous
missing...
for getting a 10 out of 10 for Famitsu and not being that great of a fighting game.
Yeah, it's really like the creator himself said it's not a fighting game, it's a JoJo game, and that is correct.
Yeah.
It's a fan service game. By the way, I should mention the American version is missing, I think, just a couple of costumes, little trivial stuff, and also if you go to the gallery, they're not going to tell you what issue of Shonen Jump they're from, because like we don't have that. So like exactly. America's missing that information. Japan's a little more comprehensive in that regard, but otherwise close enough, same game. What's also cool is that you can get a Dio wallpaper for your PS3, like a Dio theme. That's kind of nifty. And then there's the PS4 game that America got, but digital only, JoJo Eyes of Heaven, which plays a little more like Power Stone. You run around and fight in that, and it's a 2v2 game, but it's like a single player or two player. Like one player controls actually two characters. Like I forgot if you switch them out or they die, or I forgot exactly how it worked.
It's probably a tag thing, I think.
I don't know, because they're available at the same time. I forgot how it works. Like maybe it is a tag thing. It's been a while, even though I fucking let's play the game. But what I like about that is that it's actually a unique story. It's not just going through what JoJo is again. Meanwhile, as far as Japan only stuff, there are two PS2 games on Part 1 and Part 5. I've imported both of those, but I've been hesitant to Let's Play or stream them because they're all in Japanese. And there's also a Super Famicom RPG of Part 3, which is, I think it's also, like, it's like a unique take on Part 3. Like, if you know Part 3, that doesn't mean you could just beat this game. Like, it's weird. Like, a lot of important stuff has changed in strange ways, so I'm curious to look into that at some point.
Yeah, there was also a Super Famicom game that was recently fan translated that was based off of Part 3 as well.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's an RPG.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say that there's plenty of ways to get into the series now, and also the manga is in print and these beautiful.
Yeah, and they're working on Part 4 right now. They did Part 1 through 4. They're doing it comprehensively this time.
Yeah, they have these beautiful hardbound editions, and they started from Part 1, thankfully. And,
yep, they're gorgeous.
Went all the way through it, and I will also recommend, if you do not want to pay for a ton of volumes, because that's understandable.
It's substantial, yeah.
There's the Shonen Jump app that you can get on Android and iOS. That means also your tablets and your TV devices as well. You can pay $2 a month to have the entirety of all of the Shonen Jump mangas in current print. So you can read all of JoJo for $2 a month. You can read all of One Piece. You can read all of Dragon Ball and all the other Shonen Jump stuff. There's Tokyo Ghoul in there, One Punch Man, like tons of really awesome stuff for $2 a month. That is a hell of a deal. I normally don't subscribe to extra things, but like $2 a month, I mean, that's practically free. What $24 a year I can read the entire series. That is extremely reasonable. And that's the way I've been reading Part 4, actually. I'm currently reading Part 4, and I'm up to Bad Company, so I'm having a good time with it.
So that if you're up to Bad Company, that means you met Okuyasu. So Bad Company, like that guy is his brother.
Yeah. He's
the Nijimura brothers.
Interesting character.
Okuyasu is one of the scariest stands in the entire series.
Really?
I mean, you saw it. Josuke fought him.
I forget what the gimmick is.
The hand.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Where he like just disappears matter in space and like
he could just like bamf somewhere or bring
yeah,
somebody
like
in.
You like
he could cut space in between things, right?
Yeah, there's a part later in the manga because like Okuyasu is a dumbass and he knows it. Like he's very aware that he's not very smart.
And he doesn't Jotaro say, if this guy was smart, he'd be the most dangerous person in the world?
Yeah, Josuke says that. Yeah, he's like this guy is like fucking terrifying now. Like if he were really smart, like whoa, like that's the one thing holding him back is the guy himself. Yeah, it's kind of like One Piece in that regard. Like you are as powerful as you are clever.
Yeah, exactly. Like Luffy is only powerful because he's so creative with what he does with himself.
Yeah, I mean he can make a giant fist, but like that's not how he beats every bad guy.
That like all of his different forms or whatever is.
Yeah, like in JoJo, not many fights are just punching the other guy.
No,
like it's way more clever than that usually.
Everybody has to outfox the other.
Like usually the big flurry of punches is just once the battle's won, I figured out your gimmick and I got past your defenses. Now I'm just gonna coup de grace you and then just finish it off. That's not like how he wins.
The appeal is that it's like two really clever sides have to get over on each other.
The entire combat between Jotaro and Darby was playing poker. Like that was it. It was playing poker, and it was amazing.
And it was super scary, intense the whole time.
Like if you like that kind of thing, I recommend you look up Kaiji, the anime or the manga, because that entire series is gambling, and each side trying to out-cheat the other in the most clever ways possible. I've said this before on the podcast. They had multiple episodes in a row of rock paper scissors, and it was edge of seat exciting like the entire time.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really good overview of everything, and why we love it, and what's out there and how to enjoy it. So we should probably move on to fan stuff.
Oh, absolutely. So Living Corpse has a few things to say. One of them was that thing I was talking about with Lovecraft's first ever story. Like, it was a man! Like, how that first story ends. And Living Corpse said, like, oh, so what you're telling me is that Lovecraft wrote the original and then John was a zombie? Kind of, sort of. Like, not exactly, but I know what you mean. He also said Code Veronica and even Resident Evil 0 deserve a remake first. You know, before 4, he's saying. Heck, you can even argue RE1 deserves a second remake, like the RE2 and 3 styles, before RE4. I love RE4, but it doesn't need a remake yet. The original is just as solid today as it was when it first came out. Well, I mean, that's what I was saying last week. I played it back in the day, so I don't think I'd mind it now, but, like, try playing it again. The camera's weird on that one. Yeah. Also,
I just like the concept of it.
Yes, and this is responding to School Filmer's comment about Plague Inc. and how it's like a bummer to play that kind of thing now that COVID's a thing. But Living Corpse says the creators of Plague Inc. added in a mode where the goal is to save the world from a pandemic instead of making one, and they're donating money to research COVID, so that's really cool of them. And then one more from Living Corpse. You know, it's funny, when rock and metal came out, older generations said the music was evil because of how it sounds. But when watching Joker, I noticed some of the old-time music, while having a happy beat, had some fucked up lyrics. Oh, yeah. No, like, what I would like in that, too, is, you know, how people are, like, nervous about rap music and it talks about sex and murder and everything, but, like,
that's the
have you listened to country music? Because that shit is brutal.
Yeah.
Like, there's that one, I forgot exactly how it goes because I don't really listen to country music, but there's that one Johnny Cash line. It's something like, I once shot a man just to see him die or something. Yeah. It's like, at least in the rap music, like, they're mad at the person they're shooting. They're not just some fucking psychopath. Jesus Christ.
Well, you know, it comes to no surprise that, like, the reason why, you know, rap sounds so shocking is, you know, mostly because of racial.
Of course, that there's some justification. And it's the same thing with rock music. Like, it's the devil. Like, no, it's because you didn't grow up with it. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
how many people do you see complaining about TV today? Like, meanwhile, our grandparents grew up when TV was, like, invented. And they're like, oh, I don't know about this. Don't watch TV. It'll rot your brain. Now it's all about violent video games. And even that's going to probably go away once we become the people who piss and moan at their kids.
There hasn't been a good moral outrage on, like, media unless it's like a Me Too or discriminatory thing as of late.
Otherwise it's just complaining about what you didn't grow up with and therefore don't understand.
Yeah, there hasn't been like a Teletubby kind of thing in a really long time, or Satanic Panic. Remember Satanic Panic stuff?
Well, same thing. That they're growing up with it. And I mean, to be fair, at least Dungeons and Dragons had like demons in it. Oh, I don't know about this, but it still basically comes down to, if you actually looked at the fucking thing, then you know what it is.
Yeah.
Like, even Magic the Gathering in the 90s had that shit. The, like, demons disappeared from the card game for a while. Mm-hmm. And now General Ledger responds to Living Corpse's comment about the music. No kidding. I started listening to some Bing, as like Crosby, and Sinatra. I did not realize so many of the lighthearted sounding ones had downright abusive lyrics. Luck Be a Lady is about a walking inferiority complex trying to control his date at a party. Pistol Packing Mama isn't about celebrating a badass gunslinging lady, but about a condescending twit talking down to an ex that's holding a gun to his head. Like, I mean, sure, like I already mentioned, Oingo Boingo. I mean, Oingo Boingo made their music, like, specifically to be edgy. Like, they were very counterculture. But their first song, or I don't know if it's their first song, but their first album, where the name of the album is the song Only a Lad, is about this piece of shit kid who was just, like, terrible to society, and society's like, oh, well, maybe this is to blame, maybe that's to blame, and the moral is, no, he's just a piece of shit, and I hope they fucking put him on the electric chair when he finally gets arrested. And I was like, Jesus Christ. Yeah. I've already mentioned Elevator Man, where the singer, like the speaker of the song, is like a rapey creep. There's Nothing to Fear, parentheses, but fear itself, where basically the same thing. It's just like, okay, I don't know about this. Like, the music's great, but, like, don't show those lyrics to your kids, you know? It's just like, there's a little too much creepy innuendo in there. There's also Little Girls, where this was apparently supposed to be a satirical take on how people at, like, the Hollywood shows and the award ceremonies have, like, you know, like, the girl in their arm, you know, like some, not trophy wife, but some trophy woman to have with them. And Danny Elfman was, like, just disgusted by the whole thing, so he made that song Little Girls, which is, like, it sounds very overtly about pedophilia, but it was supposed to be, like, a stab at that, but he's making it sound like it's fucking creepy. So there's all sorts of fucked up stuff going on in Oingo Boingo, like, to get a rise out of the listening audience. Brilliant fucking music, but yeah.
Wow.
Like, just about every Oingo Boingo song is fucked up in one way or another. Look up the lyrics to any of their shit. Like, you're gonna find something in there. I love Oingo Boingo, but, like, they know what they're doing. Okay, Josh111888 says, it does seem odd that Capcom isn't remaking Code Veronica yet. It's more a direct sequel to... Yeah, this is what I said. It's more a direct sequel to RE2 than RE3. My theory is the writers don't know how to update Alfred Ashford. That's an interesting point. I hadn't considered that. Because, like, do you remember... I mean, it's been a while since you played Code Veronica, but you remember the whole thing with Alfred Ashford?
There was a Norman Bates kind of situation going on, right?
Yes. Let's just go with that. Yeah.
Yes. I don't want to ruin anything. But,
yeah. Well, the comment says it. Well, we already said it's a Norman Bates thing, but he says his story involves a mental illness that could be misinterpreted as being transgender. I don't think that's actually what it was, but I do see that.
He's literally trying to be his sister.
Yeah, he's like he's compensating for her being missing.
Yeah.
But there is one line where Claire literally just says, that cross-dressing freak, and it's like, oh, that didn't age well. Jesus Christ.
I mean, but that can be smoothed over.
Yeah, you could very easily just not have the line, but, like, I remember that one.
You didn't know she still existed at the time.
That's the whole thing, yeah. That was the twist on the twist.
Which is still, like, that is legit. You could still have that and not offend people, because, like, that's a weird thing to do, is to masquerade as one of your your relatives.
Yeah, because like you catch him with like the makeup and the lipstick on and the wig, and he's just like, oh, and he like runs away because like he's been caught and has to like deal with the duality. It was an interesting scene, but yeah, like that scene, situation, like depending on how people perceive it, that could be handled probably better.
Yeah.
She says a lot of and in fact, Josh says that a lot of people will be put off if they don't handle that correctly. Changing the subject, I really did not like the PS5 controller, but that could be the terrible picture that they used. Fair enough. I can't even tell what it is, and not the controller, because they used a white background to show off a white object. I'll probably like the controller better when it's not burning out my retinas. Fakafon says, "Ooh, I didn't know you lived in New Brunswick." Yeah, we went to Rutgers, so like that's in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. So that was back in the day. And he says, well, with Ashley in RE4, it's just because nothing positive comes from her presence, gameplay-wise. That's fair enough. Yeah, she doesn't help you in fights. She's nothing but a liability. She doesn't give you items, like what Ada and Shirley did in RE2. Yeah, Ada could fight, and Shirley, like, contributed to your advancement in some way. She blocks the player's view a little bit. And her dying or getting kidnapped jeopardizes your game. Yes. So from that perspective, that's why people don't like it. That's fair enough. I still say it's more minor than people are making it out to be, but that is all true.
I don't think she ever died when I had her. So I
think she died like the first time, like when she gets captured, like in a cutscene where you cannot help the fact that she's captured. And I was just like, oh, I just better kill all the guys in the room. And I wasn't really focusing on her because the guy walks away slowly. But if he reaches the door, it's just game over. I was like, oh.
Not to mention, you have the famous line because of her. Don't worry, Ashley, I'm coming for you.
It's so good. I still love Luis's line that's on his little figure. Like, what? Like, something about getting mad at you sending out the invitations? I said no more than 50 people. What? That's not in the game. And then finally, School Filmer says, I, too, am catching up on a few things, like exploring what the 1.4 patch in Stardew Valley has in store. Some people have deserted islands to go to in this messed up timeline. I have a farm. As well as replaying the first Borderlands as the Berserker. Currently doing the Zombie Island DLC, looking forward to Switch version. And I want to watch the Harry Potter movies I got last Christmas, too.
There you go.
Yeah, I've only ever seen movie 4 because someone invited me to see them. It was fine.
I think they got better as time went on.
I liked movie 4 just fine. It's just like I never really felt an urge to see the movies, even though I was like all over the books.
I would say they got better as time went on. I was actually really disappointed in the third movie because it's my favorite of the books.
Oh, Prisoner of Azkaban?
Yeah, and I thought that the movie wasn't done nearly as well as the book was.
Okay.
So, but the second movie is probably the worst, but it's also the
Chamber
worst
of
book.
Secrets?
Yeah, it's probably the worst book. So
I saw a bunch of clips of the first movie, and I liked what I saw. I just never really had an urge to go see the movies.
I think it is actually a little bit better than the second book. The second book is like the least memorable, if you ask me.
Yeah, there's just a basilisk. That's like the entire book. The fact that a basilisk exists in the Chamber of Secrets.
Yeah, I mean, like Voldemort's projection is in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he who must not be named.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, we haven't gotten to that point yet. Yeah.
Sorry, I blasphemed.
Yeah, fucked up. All right, so finally for the question, Fakafon asks, which Link in the Zelda games is your favorite Link? I think for me, it's the one from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. He feels like he has unfinished business with Navi, Skull Kid, and the fate of Hyrule even after the games are over, you know? Makes it very interesting.
Mine is Excuse Me, Princess Link.
Oh, no. Excuse... They really lay it on thick.
Oh.
My favorite is CDI Link. That deserves a kiss. Huh. I won! Yeah, I'm so hungry I could eat an Octorok. What? What a great game. The music's actually surprisingly good in that game, by the way.
Link only really got a personality probably, I would say, probably in the fourth game. Probably.
I would say Ocarina of Time because you could see his face.
Link's Awakening had a bit of a personality, I would say.
Okay. Okay.
So I would say that's where it starts. So if your favorite Link is like the original Zelda Link, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, that's not a character.
Yeah, exactly.
You are boy. You must find Triforce.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
But I would probably agree with Ocarina of Time or maybe Wind Waker because he has the most obvious like personality. Like he looks like a character because Link is mostly an avatar in like almost every game, but like there are definitely some moments where they're like, what? Oh no, like in Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and especially Wind Waker.
He probably has the most personality in Wind Waker, and in the most recent one, Breath of the Wild.
Oh, that's true. I haven't played that one yet.
So, but probably Wind Waker for me for Link. Now
I would go with Link's crossbow training.
I was gonna say I will go with Pink Link from Four Swords Adventures.
Yeah, why that one? It's the best one. The funny thing is, in Super Bomberman R, the different Bombermen actually do have different personalities.
Yeah, they do. But they're different people, not just like a split person.
Well, no, that's true, but in the older games, it was just what color Bomberman do you want?
Yeah, exactly. I will give you a bonus here and tell you who my favorite Zelda is, and it's hands down Breath of the Wild Zelda.
Well, again, I haven't played that, but she does seem very obviously most like a character. Other than that, I would probably say Wind Waker again, because...
Oh, Tetra's really cool.
Tetra's amazing.
Yeah.
Ocarina of Time had probably the coolest, like, twist, but Zelda was just kind of like, I am Zelda. And then the moment she appears, she's trapped in a fucking crystal, and you're like, well, bye.
Well, she has a defined personality going on from the third game, Link to the Past, so...
That's true, but she was barely in that game. It was like, Link, please save me. And then you're like, oh, there you are, and then she fucks off and gets captured for the rest of the game.
Marin, who is not Zelda, but, like... kind of
Zelda analog.
The Zelda analog in Link's Awakening has a very defined personality.
You know, one thing I will say was rather entertaining was Twilight Princess. That's probably one of the least amount of personality Zelda's ever had outside of
she's barely in the game.
She is barely in the game, and she's like the least personality while still being a character, right? Because in Zelda 1, she's person who must be saved. In Zelda 2, she's literally asleep the entire game. But in Twilight Princess, she's like a fucking robot. But I will say there was the interesting twist where she was kind of possessed toward the end of the game and you had to fucking fight her. I was like, whoa, that doesn't happen.
Well, she's mainly overshadowed by...
Zant.
No, the other...
Midna.
Midna.
Midna was awesome.
Midna's great and, like, gets better.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Zant was so cool.
And then he wasn't.
And then that was so disappointing. It was the same thing as Star Fox Adventures. General Skills was so cool. But enough of that. Let's go. Andros. Oh, really? I wish they didn't do that.
Never defeat Andros.
I kicked Andros' fucking ass.
He was a face.
Yep.
Remember when he was just like a bunch of shapes?
He was, yeah. Remember when he was a bunch of shapes that shot? It's like that Orson Welles line, like, I'm a toy that eats other toys. Like, I'm a shape that shoots other shapes.
That is all too accurate. Look it up, kids.
Speaking of look it up, you still need to look up that wine commercial Orson Welles was in.
Oh, yeah.
With, like, the outtakes. Ah, the French known for producing. It's like, oh, God.
Full of country goodness and green penis.
Oh, that was a different thing.
That was literally from the critic.
Yeah. Okay. God, you're such pests. What do you people want? It's like, oh God.
No,
I'm so happy someone saved that.
I'll blow you off right now.
I will go down on you.
No, we'll go down on you.
And in Pinky the Brain, I will make cheese for you. And all the parents laugh, and all the kids are like, "Where's the joke?"
Well, yeah. I don't even know how you would know what they were referencing.
Yeah.
At the time. I have no idea how you would know about that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think on that note, we should wrap everything up.
Yeah, like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask for me are close seconds, but probably Wind Waker. Yeah. And this is totally irrelevant, but Wind Waker has, in my opinion, easily the best Ganondorf fight. Or final boss fight, I would say, in any of the Zelda games I've played. I have not played very many Zelda games, but that's the one hands down.
Was it the Link to the Past sequel? What was that called?
Between Worlds.
Link Between Worlds. The Link variant in that has quite a good personality.
Because like Ganon, the fights with Ganon in the old games are the same every game. Ocarina of Time, he looked fucking badass. The Ganondorf fight was actually... What?
He was cool in that, yeah.
Yeah, Ganondorf and Ganon were really cool in Ocarina of Time, but their actual fights were very simple. Twilight Princess was pretty cool. That fight was pretty interesting. But Wind Waker, that sword fight was crazy. That was amazing.
And then we found out that he was Captain Falcon's father.
What?
I'm just kind of riffing off the fact that they're clones in Smash Brothers.
Yeah, I kind of like how in Melee he's Ocarina of Time Ganon, and in the next Smash he's Twilight Princess, like full beard Ganon.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, well, we'll have to wrap things up, unfortunately, because this is getting long in the tooth as well. That is the show for this week. We want to thank all of our fans who contributed questions. Please keep us supplied with awesome topics by submitting questions of your own via YouTube and SoundCloud pages. You guys have been killing it lately.
Yeah, I was just going to say, speaking of which, we got 2 new questions this week.
Excellent. Keep it up, guys.
So thank you very much.
While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. Helps promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Tuesdays for our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the in-depth look at this week in our lives. Finally, you can friend me as Vice the Bold on pretty much anything.
And you can follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, if you are interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, and getting in conversations with me and other patrons on Discord, then perhaps consider I did it again.
Consider on Twitter.
Consider singing by my Patreon account.
Singing?
Which is patreon.com/Lotus Prince. And by the way, one more thing, like, I swear to God, this is not a joke. One of the most entertaining Zelda depictions is actually CDI Zelda. Like, for real. She has a real sassy personality.
Yeah, I definitely recommend actually picking up the old Nintendo Power comics, which are still in print by Viz Media.
Very nice.
You can get those along with the Super Mario Brothers.
I forgot about that.
Nintendo
That was
Power
really cool of
comics.
them to do.
Yeah, they've done the 2 major ones. I wish they would do Super Metroid as well.
Yeah, the Link to the Past comics have been like all put into one volume. It's great.
Yeah,
and that's
it
not even
has
counting the manga series.
Yeah, it even has like a couple characters in there that don't really exist.
Yeah,
like,
I remember some guy called Rome.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't even know what that is, but yeah.
Nah, he's just there.
You gotta put something in there, or else it's just Link by himself the entire game.
Going, what? Ah!
Yeah. Wow, Link sounds remarkably like Cyborg Guy from Gao Gaigar. What a coincidence.
On that note, we'll catch everybody on Tuesday for another episode of Reactive.
Until next time, everyone.
Bye-bye.